Brilliant. Okay, welcome everybody to the One Planet Picnic session. And as I said before, we'll be doing a bit of interacting, so chatting with each other, and you can ask questions as we go. So let's get started. Today, we've done the putting your name and school name in the chat box. And my first question is about whether you've already done sort of food activities in school, or if this is completely new to you. So feel free to unmute yourselves or just put in the chat, quite experienced, or this is new to me.
We've done a couple of things in the nursery. Sorry, it's Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. I'm just turning my sound up. Here we go. Hi.
We've done a couple of things in the nursery for like just like for the what was it, for the Queen's Jubilee thing. We done like
Yes.
kind of like afternoon tea kind of style thing. So we've done a couple of like big group kind of things like that.
Excellent. Okay.
We've done like kind of bake sale days and things.
And how did they go for you? I'm assuming if you've done more than one thing, it's gone quite well for you.
Yeah, it does go. We've got quite a lot in the nursery, so we usually just kind of like we've got 3 different classes, so we tend to kind of do 3 different days or times to kind of make it a wee bit smaller. But yeah, it goes really, really well. It just has to be kind of really well organised in times.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Mostly organisation is kind of one of these key bits to have in place for a number of reasons. So have you ever done or included kind of sustainability as part of those events, or is this new to you? Is that aspect
No,
new?
this is just a kind of first. This is a kind of first year just starting to do kind of like eco skills things. So we're kind of having that more in mind now when we're doing these.
Brilliant.
This is our kind of first time doing the One Planet Picnic kind of thing.
Okay, fantastic. So you can see the other things on this slide here about the other things we're going to be covering. There'll be some of the nuts and bolts. What are the benefits? Because as you quite rightly say, things like this can involve quite a bit of investment and work. So what's the point of that? What are we getting out of it? And then some ideas about how we can address some of the potential challenges that that might be in there, or the work that needs to be done. So first off, we first exercise. That's the question. It's on the it's on the slide. Which of these would you prefer to eat? When I've asked this question to other people, they just go, "Oh, bang, straight away. I know."
Definitely homemade soup for me.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Sushi for Miss Wood. Brilliant.
Mind you, it's closely followed by the school dinner.
Oh, brilliant. That's really good news. And Christmas dinner, somebody else said Christmas dinner. Oh, I'm getting transcript instead of the chat, that's why. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So, some really immediate answers here. So you know quite clearly which of these you'd choose. Now, if you were going to be doing this exercise in school, or this little activity in school, you can do it just like this. It's like a straight off one-off, or you can pair things up and say, which is it for you, either or? Are you talking homemade soup? Are we talking sushi? Are we doing Christmas dinner or school dinner? Yeah, and do it in those choices, and sort of just to get the that kind of a response from the children about what their preferences are. And the point of that is because we all have different influences on our food choices, and you've just expressed clear preferences for one of those choices. So what was that about? What's behind that choice? And it can be a whole range of things.
Probably what we got to eat when we were growing up. That was my thing.
absolutely with you. I totally hear you, Miss Queen. And yes, some of those associations with family being cared for, they're very strong imprints on us, and they have a very strong influence on our food choices and preferences. And Miss Neil's satisfaction of how it turns out in taste. So that's something you'll be cooking yourself, I'm guessing, Miss Neil. When you make something yourself, it's hugely satisfying when you make it, and particularly if it's something new or using a new ingredient and it works for you, or you're discovering something else that you really like. That's really exciting. Any other thoughts about why you chose what you chose? Nicole, you said Christmas dinner.
Yeah, I just thought kind of like home comforts and family and just that kind
Yeah.
of type of vibe.
Yeah, no, totally get it. Yes. Then trying new foods that you wouldn't have on a regular basis. Brilliant. So there's all of these influences that we're already recognizing are operating, you know, as part of our food choices, and probably not necessarily on a conscious level, but they're there nonetheless. And your pupils will be exactly the same position. They'll have these influences on them. So just thinking, putting that in context about today and One Planet Picnic, that what you do with One Planet Picnic can be a part of providing some of these positive food experiences that will influence the pupils' choices over time. So we hope it's going to be a positive experience, of course. So we're here thinking about One Planet Picnic and thinking about positive influences. Just a quick question about what you're looking for from a One Planet Picnic. What in your head do you think, I'm quite interested in that because?
I think for me, the main reason that I sort of looked at One Planet Picnic was regarding obviously sustainable food choices, also to help encourage our families to understand how their food choices can influence their children in the future as well, you know,
Totally.
and to sort of bring it all together, to use it as a community event, to bring people together. That's my sort of feelings about it all.
That sounds brilliant because it can work absolutely brilliantly that way for you. And there's a few more things in the chat here. Exploring sustainability. Thank you, Miss Wood. And the field of growing aspect. Okay. So talking about the growing bit and how that links up to play, which certainly can be a really useful part of One Planet Picnic as well. And you can we'll look a bit later on about how you can link to either growing yourself or linking to local primary producers as well. When I talk about primary producers, I'm talking about people who are growing vegetable and fruits, basically those primary products. Although it could be meat as well or other dairy, it's the primary products that we use as ingredients to create other dishes when we talk about primary producers. And Mrs. Neil's still writing. So there's a few things that you've mentioned here about trying new foods, thinking about the sustainability aspect of it. I made a list, of course, so I'm just about to show you the list that I made. And this is some of the things that I know because other teachers have said this is what we've got out of it. So it's not me making this up. It's fun, which is quite a nice thing when you're learning. And I know that you know that we tend to repeat the things that we enjoy. So if you enjoy a bit of learning, you're going to do it again. So you get that opportunity for extension or for deepening or for consolidating your learning. And Miss Wood, you said trying new foods. And one of the things I was talking to somebody the other day about, what do you like about picnic? Particularly if you've got different people bringing in different dishes, then you get to try foods that other people like that they might not have put together or you wouldn't have tasted without that. So that's an opportunity. In terms of learning, it's real work learning because we all have to eat several times every day and we all at some point will need to provide food for ourselves. It's practical. So it's an opportunity to put some of the more academic or esoteric kind of learning about sustainability kind of out there into how does it how does that impact my life, and how does that look when I start to make sustainable decisions? Learning for sustainability, of course, you can put a big tick against that. And in terms of the range of focuses of learning, you can pick different aspects of One Planet Picnic because there's quite a lot to it. So you can, again, there's the opportunity for repeating, but with a different focus as we go. One year you might look at focusing on waste, the next might be on local and seasonal produce or whatever. So there we are, the option to repeat and consolidate or expand. And the other key thing is about the opportunities it gives you to connect, as you were saying, Ms. Queenan, to your whole school community, that it gives you an opportunity to link to home or to link to local business or across different classes and different year groups in the school. None of that is obligatory or mandatory. These are options that you can pick that best suit your context. Okay, so I'm going to rattle through these next slides. Who can? Well, anybody can hold a One Planet Picnic. It can be as a whole school. You can, if you decide, oh, you've done Come Dine With Me, and families came along and ate with their children, trying new foods together, and some were grown in the nursery garden. Fantastic. That sounds wonderful. And Mrs. Neal, you kind of you've made an important point here, that things that children grow, or if you grow it yourself, you're more likely to want to try it because you're already invested, you know, in what it might taste like. So your family, your class, or friends or colleagues, if tomorrow you say, I'm going to have a little One Planet Picnic for my lunch, just to have a practice of it and see what that might be like, that's something you can do very quickly for yourselves. Whenever suits you, basically. And as I said, it's repeatable. You could eventually maybe make the One Planet Picnic a framework for all your standard school events. If you're catering as a school event, then some of the principles of One Planet Picnic could be adopted by the school. That's just the way that we do food at an event. There's two kind of weeks at the moment that I'm mentioning. There's the first one, which is, of course, the weekend of the Royal Coronation. If you're doing a celebration in school, perhaps a One Planet Picnic would be something that you could do, and have dishes that are linked somehow to royalty or to coronation somehow. Coronation chicken comes to mind, but there's probably plenty of others. And then within Cape Scott Beautiful, the 5th to the 9th of June, we have a week of eco celebration. So again, there's a beautiful fit there for the end of term. Where? Outside is fantastic if you can manage it. The food does taste a bit different outside. I think it heightens all your senses. But if you need to be indoors, then a shared space, or if you don't have a space that can accommodate everybody, you can split the picnic across different venues within the school, or at different times if you need to be in the same place within school. Other benefits of going outside. Well, the picture there about the fish being smoked, sorry, is to remind you about the other senses that are involved as soon as you go out. And if you're doing even if you're doing a little bit of cooking outdoors as well, all of those senses, your smell, all that gets involved as well. So, and I'm reminded of a school that made jam one time as part of their picnic, and the whole school kind of smelled like raspberries. So there's all these other associations that you can build into the learning. Little bit of kit on the picture there. If you're doing some cooking outside, that's a BioLite cooker. It uses a tiny amount of fuel to create quite a decent heat on the top. There are different models of that around as well. This is me doing a little bit of cooking with some teachers, and I wasn't using a fancy bit of kit. That's just a plain old fire bucket, and we're just making toast. We've got some willow sticks. We've peeled the willow sticks, so get rid of the bark, and then we've stuck bread on those sticks, and we're making toast against that the fire bucket. Really, really simple. And then in terms of creating a boundary, you might be able to see there's a bit of rope as a circle around the fire bucket. So that's again that reminder there's something hot in the middle here, and it's you know, you don't step into this all at once. It's one at a time that you move across that that boundary. Sorry, there we go. And then taking other food outside. I put this picture in just because you don't need to wrap everything in plastic as a reminder. That's an old tea cloth that I put the loaf in that I'd made, and then you can just cut against it. Just being careful you don't rip your cloth, of course. So if we're thinking about a picnic, what makes it a One Planet picnic and not any other picnic? Well, the strapline is that it's good for you and good for the planet. And we're talking about the food desk. The food that we choose is healthy for us, but it's also healthy for the planet. So therefore, this project becomes, or this activity becomes, a framework to help everybody learn a little bit more about sustainable food and what that means. And what it does mean in terms of the overall concepts are that you include foods that are a bit more environmentally friendly, and that you reduce wastes. So it's things that you do include and things that you reduce. And I've put them in different ways there. In terms of the food that we want you to include, it's local and in season. The and is important there. Organically grown food or ethically traded food. And then the reduction of all the different waste fractions. It's the actual food waste, but also packaging waste, if you can reduce that as well. And how do you want to present your One Planet picnic? Again, as suits your context. You might want to do it across a lunchtime, focusing, as it suggests here, as reducing packaging, or you can do it as a snack if you want, focusing on different kind of ethical trades. You could get your pupils to prepare the food and perhaps get some people in from home to support that. And it's sandwiches and vegetable sticks and something quite simple as a starter. And with planning, you can ask the pupils, what do they want in their sandwiches? What sort of bread do you want? Are we going to make some of the bread? There's all these other questions can come into it, and you can develop it as best suits, the interests of the children. Or you can talk about linking into people at home and asking them to get involved, and it's the pupils that bring in all the food from home. That can be a bit more tricky because there's that extra layer of communication with people at home and helping them to understand what you're asking for, particularly if it's a waste-free lunch and people are used to, but I usually give my child a packet of crisps, so that's what they're expecting. So there would need to be a further conversation around that. So we've talked about positive reasons for a picnic. Because we're an environmental organisation, there are some issues around food and our food choices that need to be addressed. And that's my list of some of those that actually taking part in One Planet Picnic can help address: climate change, biodiversity crisis, all these sorts of things. What I put also in there, but it can improve social cohesion and build independence and self-reliance. We've talked a little bit about that as we've gone. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about some of those issues, and then look at what we can do about those. So, having said that there are some negative issues, reminding ourselves about what our influences were on those kind of like, I'm Christmas dinner, and it's because those positive associations. If I was to say, yeah, but something you're eating in your Christmas dinner is having a negative effect elsewhere in the world today or elsewhere, sort of, so that future people will have experience a negative impact of that. What does that do? How does that influence us? Does that mean that, how do we react to that? Because sometimes it does mean eating less of something, but equally meaning eat more of something else or putting something in as a substitute. So I think it's helpful to be clear and transparent that actually when we're talking about behaviours and behaviour change, that might mean, that's something I really like. Does that mean I'm going to have to give it up? Possibly. No one's forcing anybody to do this. This is all very much values led. But if it fits with your other values to think about looking after biodiversity and addressing climate change, then, there's an extra motivation to make those changes. And most of us, need a bit of motivation to make changes because it takes effort. So I'm not going to talk about all the detail on this slide because there's a lot of information here. I'm going to just say that there's different figures. We've got global food production. This is particularly focusing on climate change and the figures around that. But I'm going to skip down to the bit about Scotland's the food consumption in Scotland and the carbon emissions that are associated with that. And the advice from Scottish Government to help reduce the emissions from our food is to eat a healthy diet high in fruit and vegetables in season where you live. So that's the advice for reducing some of the carbon emissions associated with our food. And if you've got questions around that, please do feel free to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about that if you need any more information on that, about what that means and where they're from. But if we look at using local in-season fruit and vegetables, what are the challenges? Well, one of the things, there's a few of the ones that I thought about. How familiar are you with those raw ingredients? And some of us here already said, I'm quite interested in that, but not everybody is. So for some people, that's a barrier or a challenge. Even if you are interested in using the ingredient, knowing what to do with it can be a bit of a challenge. Is it available where you are? And the acceptability bit encompasses the sorts of things that we talked about before about the influences on what we eat. Oh, I've never eaten anything like that. Well, I'm not sure that that's, you know, oh, I don't like those sorts of dispositions that we have around food, as well as things like different religions and things like that. So the different foods that are acceptable within those other frameworks as well. So those are the challenges that I can think of. But I'd like to invite you to think about benefits of using local and in-season food where you live. So, yeah.
Helps to boost the economy.
Ha! Straight out of the gate there, it certainly does. Yes, if you're buying from local producers and your money is staying in the local economy. So yeah, you have a stronger local economy. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then they can buy more stuff with the profits and plant it more, so it just boosts everything.
Absolutely. So if you have a stronger local economy, what you're talking about here is more resilience. And we saw, you know, over the past couple of years that some of those longer supply chains weren't as resilient as shorter ones. Thank you, Misty. Yes, so the growing season is different in different parts of Scotland. You're absolutely right. I do know that there are various schools that are buying the Kida greenhouses or the different greenhouses that suit the climate and the wind speed where you are, and which, you know, helps to extend the growing season. But I take what you mean. Mr. Neil, thank you very much. Yes, local in-season food is likely to cost less because if it's in season, you've got a glut of it. There's, you know, it's all kind of, you know, ready and to harvest at the same time. So if you've got a glut of something, the price comes down. So if you're eating in season, again, it could be a bit cheaper for you. I'm going to tell you what benefits that I could thought of. There we go. So lower carbon emissions. Remember that was one of the advice that the government was saying. That's a good way to lower your carbon emissions. If it's traveling from a shorter distance, there's less associated with that. And if it's grown seasonally, then it hasn't had inputs of heat and light as well, because we're using the natural heat and light of the season to grow it. So there's less emissions that way. Local economy, we've talked about resilience, and of course it's healthy. So I'm going to show you now, if I can get this to work, this little film, which there's a link to also on the website pages. So it's a film called The Extraordinary Life and Times of Strawberry. It's only about 2 minutes long. Your task is to make a count, you know, a numbered count of every time that you see a machine or an appliance working to supply that strawberry or to get that to you. Okay, so let's
my sweet baby. You mean everything to me. I love you.
Can we get strawberries?
No, honey.
Please?
Okay.
Okay. Come back to the presentation. How many? How many did you count? Could you see? Could you see? I'm hoping you could see the film. 8. Thank you. Any advance on 8? Okay. 6. Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to make it full screen and I don't know quite what's happening with the Vimeo player, but there wasn't an in-screen player to make it full size. I don't think it's because it was in the slide. Sorry about that. What I can do for the next little film is to take the URL and put it elsewhere so you can see the full screen. But basically, you can see there was a number of different machines that were used to get the food to the consumer, and then of course it got wasted. I've just seen the point you made there, Miss Queen, about some of the local produce seems to last longer than things that are bought that come from far away. Yes, it's a really good teaching tool, actually, because there's a number of questions that you can use about it. There's a number of ways you can ask the pupils to watch it and what you want them to look out for. One of the questions that I use for when teaching with it is sometimes is to say, okay, so the strawberries got thrown away at the end. At what point was their fate decided? And there might be several. People might find several different, decisions that were made along the way that meant that those strawberries got wasted. So that's another use you could make of this. But I've got another question here, which is, if that strawberry was grown seasonally near you, what would change in that story? So that's another kind of thinking tool that you could use against that sort of a resource, about how does that change. And then you can do some looking at the carbon that's associated with that, and that's helping people to understand about the reduction in carbon. Okay, so thinking about food waste, this figure is from the amount of edible food that was wasted in 2018 by different sectors. So you've got the different sectors here, which is the largest sector, and this is UK figures. So who wasted the most edible food? Yeah, households. And that's sometimes not what we expect, because we hear lots of stories about the waste from supermarkets. So sometimes what our perception doesn't match the actual figures. HAFS, that's hospitality and food service. So as I say, this is excluding the inedible parts. So things like eggshells and banana peels are not included in this. This is just the edible stuff. And then you've got 6.4 million tons of food that is wasted. This is post-farm gate. So this doesn't include any wastage on the farm either. This is just consumer waste. So what does 6.4 million tons look like? Well, I find it really difficult to imagine these sorts of figures, but I thought this was quite a really useful way of helping people to understand how much food that is. So I won't say it, I'll just let you read it. It's a lot. And when we think about people who are in food poverty, these figures, there's a tension between them, and there are ways that perhaps these things could be rectified or the system changed so that the food isn't wasted and people don't go hungry. So, challenges in reducing edible food waste. Well, if you're doing this at school, is there a food waste collection system that you can use? If you have, is it used correctly? If it isn't, then there's that effort to work with the pupils to show them how to use it, so they understand how to use it, but also the other bits about the value system that and the kind of attitudes, so that they want to use it correctly. There's also a bit about consumer behaviour in terms of food outside school as well. So those are some of the challenges if we're going to be reducing food waste in school. What are some of the benefits? Is there any that spring to mind? I see a few people typing. Feel free to unmute yourselves as well if you wish. Any of the benefits that you can think about if we stop wasting food? Spot on, Mrs. Wood. Yes. If we don't buy, if we buy what we need and don't overbuy, then we're saving ourselves money. There's a direct relationship. Absolutely.
I'd say, sorry, it's Miss Wood.
Hi.
I'd say that this is, at Galston, this is probably our biggest problem at the moment with food waste. It's something that we've been trying to combat for a little while.
Okay.
We've noticed that there's so much food being wasted, especially by the younger pupils, and it's mainly the fruits, vegetables, salads that come on the side.
Okay.
So we have been trying. It's not been very successful. But we've spoken to the kitchen staff, and they do, you know, they have a duty to provide the kids with that food no matter what, and we also can't force them to eat it. So that's definitely a huge thing, and that's one of our focuses for the eco schools this year.
What have you tried? What's your first steps?
So we've tried to address it during assemblies, whole school assemblies. We've also, we trialed it, it didn't work. We trialed children coming and getting their like dessert after they've eaten their main course. That didn't work. It wasn't easy to incorporate into the lunch break. And then we also, the kitchen staff, they do weigh our food waste at the end of the day, but for the older ones, it's a shock when we tell them the numbers, but for the younger ones, they haven't got any idea about how much,
yes,
you know, is being wasted.
Yeah. I see you're in the same boat, Mrs. Queenan.
We're in the same boat as well.
Yeah.
We've got a lot. It's mainly the veg and the fruit, not so much, but it's like the veg and like the mashed potatoes or like things like that. The sides that they don't eat in lunch times.
Okay. I know that there was a school, and I apologies to the school, I can't remember which school it was, but they did a really clever way of starting to involve the pupils in that conversation about food waste, and they used some of the older pupils to run surveys, talking to the rest of the pupils about why they were wasting that food. What was it about the food that they didn't want it? Was it just too much? Was it something they didn't like? So that the pupils were involved in collecting that data. So it's the pupils talking to no longer. So Dee's saying we no longer put the sides on the plate. They're on a separate table for the children to help themselves to. We also serve pudding separately after, but we're a small school, so probably easier for you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Thank you, Dee. That's another really nice idea about that kind of yeah, offering that, having that sequential offering. So the pupil survey that I was talking about, and so using the pupils to establish what were the reasons, what were the reasons the pupils themselves were identifying about why they weren't eating that food. And that information is really helpful for then what to do about it. Because if it's actually, I don't know what that is, that's maybe something that can be addressed in a different way. About, we're going to try different tastes today, we're going to grow some of that, and then we're going to try it. And what do you want to try it as? Should we just try it as a slice of the, an apple, or a tomato, or a cucumber, or whatever? Or so there's options that you can go down that road. About improving familiarity with it. And there's something I'll come on to a bit later about using all of our senses around increasing familiarity with new foods.
And sorry, it's Dee. It's just easier than typing again.
Totally fine.
The other thing we've stopped doing is we've stopped letting them leave as soon as they think they're finished. So they've all got to stay in the dining hall for 20 minutes. And that we find that's helping, because they're sitting there anyway, they're not allowed to go out and play yet. So they are actually eating a little bit more.
That's really interesting. Okay, and that reminds me of another school that actually reduced food waste inadvertently. That wasn't what they were trying to do. They were trying to improve the behaviour in the dining hall. So what they did was to introduce what they called a top table, which had flowers and a tablecloth and all that kind of stuff. And the different tables, or the pupils that got to sit at the top table were the pupils at the table that had behaved nicely in the dining hall throughout the week, and maybe finished their food or been helpful to the other pupils, or observed the system correctly. So they then got to be on that top table, and this was about, as I say, about trying to improve behaviour, and the reward was this, beautifully presented table. And what they found was, because they were focusing on the behaviour, actually what happened was that the food waste almost disappeared overnight, and they hadn't been focusing on that. It was, like you were saying, Dee, about this is changing the approach to that time, that this is an opportunity for you to socialise. I mean, that's another thing you could do, rather than doing, if you don't have a behaviour issue that needs dealt with, you could flip that and say, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put little provocations for conversations on your table, and it's about providing a way for you to talk with each other on the table and find out something about each other on the table, and those sorts of things to keep people there and interacting. So we're boosting that social side of things. Just a few ideas there. Oh, and we have been trying fun with food, exploring properties of broccoli, for example, and got some of the children having a taste of raw broccoli, followed by using it to print to see what it looks like. Fantastic. Exploring different tastes can be really fun, and you can change that up in all sorts of ways. Brilliant. So those are the challenges. If we are reducing edible food waste, we've identified that we reduce cost, and here are the other ones that I thought of. You reduce greenhouse gases as well. Because when food waste goes into landfill and rots down in landfill, it makes methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So if we're reducing food waste, we're also reducing our carbon emissions. And like with the strawberry, when we saw all of that effort and all of that fossil fuel that goes into creating the strawberry and getting it to your fridge at home, all of the carbon that's embodied in those strawberries, if you waste the food, you waste all that carbon as well. So you don't have wasted carbon if you eat all the edible fractions. So one of the other things that we talk about, of course, is biodiversity loss. And there's a quote there from the State of Nature report from 2000, that's the UK report. And there are different changes in agriculture, increasing use of pesticide, those sorts of things, and fertilizers, and removing ponds, and increasing the size of fields. Those sorts of things have been driving the loss of nature. Agriculture is not the only one. There's obviously climate change that is impacting on it as well, and pollution or non-native species. They're all having a negative impact. So what we do to address that is we think about using organically grown food, because organic farming is more friendly to wildlife. It produces the food, but it also produces other goods for us as well. So the challenges that I can think of about selecting organically grown food is the same thing as local and seasonal, that if it's a fresh or raw ingredient that you're not familiar with, there's a barrier there, and the associated skills to use them if they're unfamiliar. Are they available near you? Can you find them? And if you can find them, are they priced differently? They may be more expensive than other options. And the reason, of course, why they might be more expensive is because there are different things that organic food produces, and there's a different standard that the producers are held to. Any benefits that you can think of or you're aware of around using organic food? I can't see anybody typing, so I'm thinking that means there may not be. So I'm going to move on and show you the benefits that I can think of. Organic farming looks after the soil. So there's improved soil health. There's improved biodiversity because it doesn't use pesticides so much. Those improved soils also mean that the land is more resilient, particularly to flooding and drought and things like that, because the soil works better, it's healthier. And if you have a soil that's working better and you have an ecosystem that's healthier, then people coming in the future are more likely to be able to feed themselves, because we're looking after those natural systems that support food production. And I've got a wee film here. What I'm going to try and do is, oh, no, that didn't work, sorry. I was going to pick up that. Oh, beg your pardon. Not quite sure there why that one's not working. I'll see if I can find that one. I'll find that one at the end and see if I can pick it up from the slides elsewhere and drop it into the chat so that you can have a look at that one yourself. It's the Soil Association, so it's a promotion about. It's a nice little film that you can show the children about what organic means and what the farmers do for that. That's a little table that I want to point you to that summarises some of the things we've been talking about. And this little film is worth watching. And I'm going to see if I can get this one. Let's see. Oh, yeah, hey, yeah, I can get that one to work full screen. So this is another benefit. This is, Mrs. Green, this is one of the things we talked about right at the very beginning. Here we go.
If you could have dinner with anyone, living or dead, who would you choose?
Kylie Minogue.
Oh. Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, God, I wouldn't have a clue.
I know, straight up. Paul Hogan.
Kim Kardashian.
No.
I'd like to have dinner with Justin Bieber.
What? He's not coming to my house.
No,
I'd have Bob Hawke.
Dave Hughes.
Barry Humphries.
Jimi Hendrix.
People who have made a difference in the world, maybe Nelson Mandela at the dinner table.
I don't know what he's going to say, I'm scared.
If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would you choose?
Probably our whole family, like a whole extended family. Mum and Dad. Mum and Dad. Does it have to be a celebrity? Could it be family?
We love it. We talk about how school is. We ask Mum and Dad how their day was.
Family.
Yeah, Mum and Dad.
Family. Who would you like to have a dinner with? They just want to be with us while they're eating food, which is pretty cool.
They see us above everything. I'm gonna get.
Yeah. Bit of a message in it for me.
Yeah.
So there we are. That's an advert, an Australian advert for a product, but I think it's a cracking advert. We'll get back to these slides. And just as a nice little reminder about kind of, those are some of the benefits that you will also incur by eating together. Is one of the things that we do when we're building relationships. If you think back to sort of teen years, or when you were going dating or things like, some of you might be still, or do that right now. But one of the things that we do, or meeting new friends, what do? We go, let's go for a coffee, or should we just go and, get a supper, go for a drink, whatever. We eat and we drink together as part of our social cohesion. So if you do a small bit of the environmental stuff as well, you are also doing quite a lot of the social cohesion too, as part of that. So how can some of these challenges be addressed? Some of those challenges we looked at, because there were benefits and challenges. I've got a few suggestions, and again, these are from schools that have already done some of this. And one of the things we talked about was, how familiar are you with these new ingredients, or how likely are you to try new ingredients? And that might be a challenge for some people. So if we use our senses, if we do smell tests of different foods, and so you don't have to eat it. We're just asking you to smell it in the first instance. And then you don't even necessarily have to be able to name it, particularly if it's new to you. That's not the test. You could do a thing by, you repeat the smell test, and there's 3 or 4 food products in little tubs or whatever. So they can't see it, you just smell it. Can you recognize it in 3 days' time, or tomorrow, or in a week time, or next week? How long, so it's about developing a bit of that sense of smell. If they do want to know what it is, then you can put the name of the food against it. Or you can do matching games. So you could, again, developing vocabulary. So what's that smell? And what's the word that you would put with that smell? And you can either offer the words in the first instance to help improve vocabulary, or you can ask them to, give you their words. I'd put a few here as possible. So there's the ones that we associate with taste, or smell, or touch, but also we've been talking about our other associations with food. So memory is there too. So there's just a few that I could think of off the top of my head, and there are other lists, obviously. So you could do that kind of language development alongside of that, and then getting into bigger descriptions about the food. So a little game where you can say, I'm going to describe a food using some of the words we've talked about. You have to guess what it is. So there's a number of ways that you can manipulate this, and all of that is to increase familiarity with the foods. If you can add in the taste to it, that's brilliant too. I will a little, oh no, this is, so yeah, discovering new foods, whether it's something very, that used to be very common like kale, or, and that picture there, those are all different varieties of apples that will grow in Scotland. You don't get that many in a supermarket. You get maybe, 10 tops, different varieties, but there's a number of different varieties of apples you can get. And then you can start thinking about, so which parts of the plant are edible? Normally we label a plant in terms of its plant parts, but you can also say, well, which parts of that are edible? Where's the fruit? If there's an apple kind of thing, or what about the seeds? Are the seeds edible? What about the kale? Those are leaves, so we eat leaves as well. So again, just kind of helping that broader understanding that all different parts of plants are edible. And I love these pictures, particularly see the intensity of the experience. You're creating memories, which is where we come back to the beginning, creating those positive food memories about trying different things. And somebody mentioned growing things as well. If you are growing that crop, you are already increasing familiarity. I don't know if you're familiar with chives, that's the purple flower. And all of that is edible, including the flour itself, and it has a very mild sort of oniony taste. So if you're doing cheese sandwiches for your picnic and you grow some chives, you can sprinkle some of the purple flowers within it as well. So that's another way to increase familiarity with your crop. And I've never yet seen a kid that's grown potatoes not excited, but to find the actual potatoes when they pull them out the ground. Being involved in the food preparation is also part of that experience. So you get to hold the thing, you get to feel what it's like in your hand before you put it in your mouth. All of that supports new experiences, new tastes. So we've got chives. I mentioned chives. We've got a little bit of chives. These are just new potatoes with the skin on, a tiny bit of mayonnaise, and a little bit of chives chopped on the top. Really simple, that the children made them themselves, and putting them in the little cupcake thing makes it a little bit special. Oh, and these are secondary pupils on this picture. Particularly want to mention them because they were focusing on reducing waste. So they made a soup with sweet in it, and it was, I think, celery as well. And I don't know if you can see what they're holding. The bowls that they're holding are the hollowed out neeps that they used. So they used the turnip, but they hollowed out the neep and used that as the bowl. And the spoons, they also carved from celery sticks. So the whole thing was edible, which is just amazing. If you are going to do a One Planet picnic, I would encourage you to register for it. You'll find the button on the website, because there are a number of resources when you do that you get access to. So things like there's a recipe for piadina romagnola, which is a really beautiful little flatbread that you can easily make in school with like about 8 ingredients. There's things like these invitation proformas, kind of like templates for different invitations or recipe share sheets or those sorts of things that you can use. And there are different planning resources. So if you want to plan your whole event or involve your pupils in planning the whole event, there's this form, and there's a series of questions that it's useful for you to answer. If you want to just involve the pupils in planning the recipes, or maybe start at that point, there's also a recipe planner for that. So they do the research on what is it that they want to make, what's the name of the recipe, how many does it serve, do we need any equipment to get that prepared, and is there what time, and then looking at each of the ingredients, they list them, each of the ingredients, and say, is that grown here or nearby, or is it in season now? So there's a number of those sorts of resources to help you there. There's also on the website a PowerPoint that you can use to show others in school or at a school assembly. If you want to bring others along with the journey with you, it kind of, in a nutshell, sort of puts the nuts and bolts into how you can go forward with that. There's also curricula maps for linking with food and environment. That's within the Eco Schools topic on the Keep Scotland Beautiful website. If you do One Planet Picnic, please do use social media and tag us so that we can share your good news. But also your local press might be interested to hear about what you're doing. And that's kind of useful, again, for any suppliers that you might want to go back to next time, because if you get a bit of press involved, you can then go to suppliers next time and say, look, we got a bit of publicity about this. If you'd like to donate some produce to us, we can help to promote you, that sort of thing. So if there's a local supplier that wants a bit of profile, that might be a nice way for you to work together. And I think that's it. Yes, there we are. Oh, 1 minute too. I said it was going to be an hour. I'm going to stop sharing just now. Does anybody have any questions? or anything that they want to know more about? Okay, no, thank you. Brilliant. And thank you so much for joining in. I know it's the end of the day and you're very tired. I do appreciate that you're taking part in this conversation as well. And I hope it helps you to see how some of these conversations could be used also in class as kind of ways into this topic or into this activity. Okay. You're very welcome. And thank you so much for joining. I'll let you go now. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.